I think the camera just turned off.
As we're testing out new cameras, but they're just like, we're not using them. We're just testing them.
Well, one of them's broken.
One of them just doesn't fucking turn on, and I'm really mad about it.
And so I think that would just turn off.
Well,
we'll have to see.
The show goes on.
Yeah.
As a Lupe fiasco, one sec.
The show does go on.
No, but did I get the name right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, welcome back to Get the Check. I'm Maya.
I'm Monica.
I'm Priya.
And today we have a fun lineup. So we're first going to dive into the AI browser wars. In the last week, OpenAI announced their ChatGPT Agent, which isn't a browser, but was supposed to be one because everyone thought they were going to announce a browser, but they didn't. And then we're going to compare that against Perplexity, Comet, and DeJa, which is run by the browser company. Then we're going to go into the state of AI in China. So if you didn't know, NVIDIA recently got approval from the US to resume selling the H20 chips back to China, as well as Moonshot AI released a Kimi K2 model, which is an open source, non-reasoning model. And then finally, we'll be going into Lovable's recent Series A of 200 million at a 1.8 B valuation. If you didn't know, they're basically like app in a box. Like you just type a prompt and they make a full app from front end to back end to database. A little different than Cursor because Cursor is kind of more involved in just editing your code in your IDE. But
yeah, so starting with the AI browser wars in ChatGPT Agent, it basically can connect with any of the connectors that they have, like Gmail or Calendar or whatever it is, and they can like take control of like agentic workflows, for example. So some of the examples they gave were plan a breakfast. It was like specifically plan a Japanese breakfast and buy all the ingredients for me. So not only can it plan it, which is something you might traditionally ask ChatGPT, but then it can also go take action on your behalf. The way that they presented this was that it brings kind of three key parts of their different products together. So there's like operators' ability to interact with websites, deep research ability to synthesize information, and then ChatGPT's just like intelligence and conversational fluency, which is like what we traditionally interact with the most.
And because they combined all those different parts, like Operator and ChatGPT, they were able to do a lot better on benchmarks. Like it reached 41.6% on humanities last exam, which is the same benchmark of like crowdsourced difficult questions in different subjects that we talked about last week. And we're talking about how Grok 4 scored a 38.6% and how that was like best in class, but the benchmarks already moved with this release on July 17th, so like 4 days ago.
And I think a conversation a lot of people have been having was that the benchmarks are fine, like it is what it is, but we also need a way to test the agentic capabilities of it because that's what's actually important.
Yeah, they have an internal benchmark that's basically like what percentage of a junior investment banking analyst's work could ChatGPT Agent replace, which is funny because I feel like that's very related to our lives since like a lot of our friends are like junior investment bankers or like we had similar jobs as well. And they found that it was like 41% of an investment banker's like first year tasks. And I actually watched a video by Wall Street Prep, which is like one of the big companies that does like prep videos and help for like in people recruiting for investment banking. And they asked Agent to basically create like an LBO, which is like one of the more complicated financial models. And they said they had to prompt it like a few times to correct itself, but that its like result was completely accurate, which is basically 1-to-1 with a junior analyst, which you probably have to like correct and prompt anyways.
Yeah. And on the other spreadsheet bench, like they are marking a human as having like 71%. So the fact that it's at 45, it's not like 45 versus 100. It's like 45 versus 71.
That makes sense. Yeah, and it can basically do like 3-statement financial modeling, LBO analysis, formatting, citations, like a lot of that PowerPoint stuff. And I will say, like, having worked in consulting, I feel like if you looked at like 10 of Bain's decks, like the formatting and even like some of the content is like very, very formulaic. Not that the information isn't different, like deck to deck, but in a way that like I think AI would be like very good at like pattern recognizing that.
I mean, there's a lot of competitors for PowerPoint presentations. Like there's Gamma. I don't know if you guys have used it, but there's like a bunch of slide generation apps, and I feel like OpenAI can just kill those.
I mean, it makes sense that a leading lab can kill one of those competitors just because a lot of times they'll focus on the model and then the product experience to them is just like really quick and easy to build. Like I think they built, like for example, they built Codex in 8 days. And not saying that Codex like took out Cursor. It just shows the capability that they have to be able to create a competitive product in the market for like any domain. One thing that I was really curious about is why they didn't actually just make it a browser, and why they kind of made it this whole like computer takeover thing. And a lot of people are like a little bit upset about this because they like kept saying that they would release a browser, they kept releasing a browser, but then in the end they released like just like a general agent for your computer. And I actually think this is like pretty smart of them because, and we can get into this later, but it's like the reasons why people want to go after the browser game have changed over time. A lot of it is due to data, for example. And I was thinking like, okay, why would they just go for your entire screen? Well, it's like all your data is on your entire screen. So to like let them kind of record that is actually even more powerful than just the browser.
I also think it's a question of like form factor. Like I feel like we're thinking about the browser in a way that like 50 years from now, everyone's going to be like, why was everyone worried about like what the next browser would be? Like I feel like the browser's form factor is based on like an archaic way of conveying information. Yeah. That like OpenAI might just have like thought about it. Because like they hired a bunch of like ex-Chrome people, which is why people thought they were going to go after this in the first place.
Well, in their like press release tools, especially when they were talking about Codex, they were like, oh, I want GPT to just be like this agent that does everything for you in any sort of form factor. So it would be on your phone, it'd be on your laptop, and Codex wouldn't be like a separate product. It would be part of the product suite, but it would be like a tool that GPT uses. I now look back at their press releases and I see how they were kind of building up to this release, because they were in a way hinting that like they would never go after a browser. They would just go after like an all-you-can-do agent, and this was that release. And what's so funny is that it came out on the same day that Astronomer's CEO like affair got like was made public, and so everyone was talking about how Astronomer's CEO just like took the day.
No, not a single person was talking about this.
No one was talking about it. It was crazy because it was supposed to like blow the market away, and then no one gave a shit at the end of the day.
Imagine like grinding on this and then someone's affair gets like
that gets publicized. For context, basically Astronomer's CEO and the head of HR were found having an affair at a Coldplay concert because they were on the Jumbotron.
It like sounds so insane when you say that.
And he has now stepped down from CEO.
Yeah. Wait, I feel like I for sure could have made money off that prediction market. Did you see the people that made like...
Yeah.
People made so much money.
No, I don't know. Like I saw it and I was like, I could see it either way. Because it's like an affair.
But it's like with his like chief people officer.
No, I mean,
like,
I agree he should have stepped down, but like I feel like you never know like how much a company cares
about them. Yeah.
Like I've never heard of Astronomer, and I feel like I'm never gonna hear of them again.
Well, we used Astronomer. I feel like it's like one of those it's one of those like DevOps type of companies that you won't hear about unless you're a developer.
I'm not. So I was like, it's one of those companies that you don't hear about if you're dumb.
Well, I feel like it's the same reason why I don't know too much about Airtable.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. It's like if it's in your workflow.
Yeah.
Well, going back to Agent, should we talk about their safety concerns? Because everyone's always talked about as AI develops agentic capabilities, safety becomes so much more important because, like, to Maya's point, they have access to all of your data and they can take, like, actions on that data. Yeah. Like, when you look at these, even, like, browsers, like the other browsers we're going to cover, like, the access rights they get are, like, so long. So they, like, increase the level of preparedness that they think that the model should have under their preparedness framework to high capability in biology and chemistry.
And they ran a bunch of tests on this too. They basically hire a bunch of PhDs to red team whatever model it is. But in this specific scenario, they found that when red teaming, there was 95% performance against visual browser, like instructions, but that still means that 5% of the time they were able to get to the point where they could get instructions.
And that was after like the initial red teaming, which I think had like, it had 16 incidences out of 110. So I think that's around like 14%. Yeah.
That's a really high number.
Yeah.
Really high.
Yeah. And then they went back and then they deployed a bunch of fixes, which were like, some of the fixes actually do seem like they decreased the capability of the model in favor of safety. Like they enabled like a watch mode where like, let's say I can't be like, oh, sell my $100. Like I have to press that button myself And they actually disabled the memory feature as well.
Which I feel like is really big. I mean, I think like OpenAI will enable memory for it at some point for sure. It's just a matter of like when that happens.
Might have had more than 8 days to build this compared to like Codex, but I do believe it was just like out of like whatever, like minimal scope.
Velocity.
Yeah. Velocity or whatever, yeah. Yeah, and then we wanted to do a quick comparison against Comet and Dia. So Comet is Perplexity's browser. It's able to reference tabs for tasks like online shopping or comparison or summarize YouTube videos. The CEO said that it's supposed to transform browsers into operating systems of workflows. So he actually bought the os.ai domain to redirect that to Comet because he wants people to think of it as like an operating system, the next operating system, which kind of makes sense to your earlier point. The main ability is that like one can search like normal Perplexity can, but it also just like takes action. So it could, in theory, interact with your spreadsheets and Figma files. Although like the early results have showed that it's pretty flawed.
Yeah, it honestly reminds me, like both Perplexity, Comet, and Dia by the browser company remind me of like what Cluely's doing. Yeah. Because like, have you guys seen like product demos of Cluely?
Yeah.
I feel like it is just like this like sidebar AI thing that like moves with you into all of your browsers, which is like very similar to how I saw like Perplexity, Comet, which is $200 a month, so I haven't used it myself.
Yeah, and people are excited about this. There's around 500,000 people on the wait list for Comet. And right now, because you said it's only released to the $200 a month tier, if all of those people were to pay that, they would be instantly a 1.2 billion ARR company. But obviously, I think those people are just on the wait list for the $20 tier, which is like 120 million. I think their last reported like ARR is around 70 million. So if all those people do end up paying $20 and those people are not part of their current base, they could definitely 2x their revenue, which is pretty good, but nowhere where they need to be at for their current valuation, which I think is like 13 billion or something.
Yeah, and their CEO also was talking about how they are very explicitly going after Google, which I thought was interesting because I feel like none of them pit themselves like one-to-one with anyone else usually. But I also think if there's ever a time to do it and like a place to do it, I think Chrome has traditionally had like such a stronghold and everyone kind of agrees that Gemini is clunky. And so I think like this is the time to go after them.
Yeah, I think he wants Perplexity Comet to be like installed as your default browser. But I think this is where I'm like now seeing like OpenAI's release of the GPT agent. It's like, is Perplexity just almost being done by pigeonholing themselves just into the browser? Because for example, like there's so much I do on Notion on the Notion app and not within the Notion browser. Like I would never use like the web app version of Notion.
Oh, yeah, I guess right? I do use mostly web apps.
It depends on like how much do you believe is outside of your browser? Like how much work do you think you do outside of your browser? And is that like that important for the next player?
But why can't, I don't think it's like that hard for Perplexity to just like launch a version that like lives, because you can already download Perplexity as an app, right? And then it'll just be like a version that like lives on your computer.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of like first mover advantage too. Let's say like OpenAI has like really good success with GPT Agent. People are downloading it, and they think of that as the first like desktop agent app that they use. Right? That will become like the initial like leading standard. It's kind of like how GPT-3 was like the first release and everyone's like, wow, this is crazy. Rush to make better apps. I personally think GPT is like really slow, but like it is the most popularly used search app.
Yeah. And Perplexity's Comet will look at like 7 days of history at most if you opt in, but it doesn't really have a memory feature. That's more Dia, which I thought was interesting that like Perplexity, Comet, and Agent, which are probably the leading players, both are not saving your memory. The last thing I wanted to say was Dia is the browser company's browser, and they originally had Arc, which went like viral, and I'd say the tech community, similar to like how Superhuman might go viral.
Yeah.
And it was basically just supposed to be this like next gen browser that was like Chrome hasn't shipped a feature in so long, like use us. It's like very analogous to like the Superhuman pitch.
Yeah.
But I think like the ramp up to like become good at using that browser was like too high and people didn't care enough. So it kind of like failed, I guess, because like now they're like pivoting right to like Dia. But like when I listened to his interview, I thought it was really interesting because he kept bringing back like TikTok. Like I feel like the companies that a company compares themselves to, I find really interesting. He kept being like, oh, I want it to be like as addicting as your TikTok algorithm, which I think is like unique to the to the browser company over what like Perplexity or Agent are doing. And I wonder if that's because Perplexity and OpenAI don't feel like the AI safety is at a point where they can like comfortably do that yet. That's
like take all
guess.
your information basically and make it super personalized.
Yeah, like a lot of the stuff I've read, even just like online, like in tech Twitter, about like AI being dangerous or like ChatGPT being dangerous, all has to do with like memory, or a lot of it has to do with memory.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing I would say is I feel like their number one priority is to make it work. Like, it doesn't matter if it's personalized unless like the actual agent is able to complete the tasks. Like GPT and Comet are just being like, no, like we're going to completely change the way people think of using things, where you don't ever ask questions anymore. You just say, go do things, which I'm like, on a theoretical level, I'm like slightly concerned, because I feel like the only way you can make a decision is if you're curious about all the information. So as human beings, like, do we just become a less curious species? Or is Dia making a bet that, like, regardless if we have agents to do things for us, we will still be curious human beings and still want to just ask the questions and not have someone do stuff for us?
I think we are becoming less curious.
I also think like you can still ask the question to like agent. I think they're just like making a bet that like the way we expect to receive information on our questions changes, but not that people stop asking the questions. You're trying to build product in like the missing area. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they're making a bet that the missing area is like, you can't ask OpenAI, like his model, to send an email for you, more so than like it's not a browser.
I think it's just the emphasis on what they put it on.
Yeah.
So we can go into why these companies are going into the browser game. If we just do a quick historical lesson, back in the 90s when the World Wide Web was released.
World Wide Web. She's going back in time.
Remember the one recording where Maya was like, back in 1272? We were like talking about like tariffs or something, and she was like, back when the first caveman traded a stick for a rock. I was like, what the fuck?
But so the World Wide Web was released, and it was just basically a rudimentary tool for displaying text and hyperlinks. And then there was a need for browsers to be able to actually get to those websites. And so you had Internet Explorer reaching a lot of traction because Microsoft always bundled it with Windows. So it was like the default thing that was like installed into Windows. Then you had Firefox kind of coming in as a strong contender until 2008 when Google decided to launch Chrome. And by 2012, it had surpassed Internet Explorer and it now commands over 65% of the global market share. And I think the biggest thing was that the Chrome team was really particular about the performance. So they made a new JavaScript engine to be able to deliver like faster search queries. So they identified as like this is like the key differentiator that they wanted. And the reason why they wanted it is because they wanted to just funnel everyone to Google search so that they could increase their ad search business. So they were just like, we're going to make Chrome a loss leader. We're not going to charge any money for it because we're going to make all that money back in ads. But the same model of thinking about browsers doesn't really apply to AI today anymore. Because the idea is that like if agents are going to go and do these things for you, you're not seeing the ads, if that makes sense. The agents are. And the agents might be a little bit more unbiased or biased. We don't really know how the ads game is going to play out in the browser world. So I think people are less worried about ads money now, but more about just data. And if building a defensible data moat from you browsing is going to be like worth the amount of money that they're putting into making these products.
One way I saw that ads can still be incorporated is by having like affiliate links basically. Mm-hmm. And so, which is so weird to think about because like we see sponsored links, but I feel like you're making the active decision to either click on it or not click on it. Mm-hmm. But if it's an agent, and I don't know exactly like how it would work, but it's like, let's say 80% of the time they end up clicking on this because someone's paying you to take that action. But then they provide like a shit product. Yeah. I don't know. It's just like interesting because those things are like very at odds with each other.
That's true. And then you can also make ads for agents.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you like optimized your ad for an agent to use you instead of others, or just like in general, you optimized your website for your agent to use you instead of others. I don't know. It's just like so
weird to think about.
It's like too many dimensions into the problem for me to really know what I think about it.
Yeah. Wait, this is like a side note, but yesterday I saw that Delta is changing their prices on tickets based on like what an AI thinks about you. So it's like personalized. Like Delta's doing pricing specific to you based on what an AI tells Delta that they think you'll pay for it. So like if you're someone that like clearly doesn't care, you'll just like book a ticket whenever, Delta's like gonna roll it out to 25% of their tickets by the end of this year and basically just like target you to make more money off of you.
Time to go incognito.
But I guess back to what you were saying about the data game, something I saw about like owning the browser is that you get like real-time data and it'll help you like train your models. But I'm curious like what you think about that.
I think the idea is that because we're hitting a public data wall, people are trying to get any access to data that they can. So like OpenAI acquiring Windsurf, not just for the product, but for the data, and all of these labs making their own products so they can understand user preferences. Right now, a huge part of making browser agents in the beginning is we had very little data on like people using their mouses and people like clicking on different things. Like we're still at a very early stage. Like I would say similar to what GPT-3 was like when we first asked it to like write an essay. Like it couldn't write an essay.
Yeah, like it was bad.
They're just trying to get access to that so that they can build the next leading browser agent. And so the question is like, is Perplexity trying to also build a browser agent themselves that is like better than one of the labs? Is Perplexity trying to be a lab themselves? I'm not super sure. My guess is it's going to be really hard for you to build a really powerful browser agent without having access to this data because this data doesn't exist for other people.
So that you can start collecting that data and then you can improve on it.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we haven't cracked in the AI model space is like continual learning. So there's no way to like learn and update your models real time. But algorithmically, if they're able to figure that out, that'll be super powerful for these labs. Because then they can start updating their basically new version of a content algorithm real time, which is like what Google does right now, except it's obviously deterministic. Because it's like learning what you're searching and then it's like updating its preferences based on that. Like I'll literally be on Revolve, look at like something, and then that will be part of the ads. And I know that's like not part of the content algorithm, but it's like kind of in the same vein of like
it happens so fast.
Fast. And part of you achieve that with memory, right? But then part of that is like, do we, in the world where we have a continual learning AI model that's like just getting better and better and better, which is kind of like AI doomsday.
Maybe that's what Elon's going for, right? Like his whole thing is like he wants it to be real-time learning.
Well, I think everyone knows that if we can crack that, that's like cracking ASI. But there's nothing to say that we are going to be able to crack that. It's kind of just like whether or not the discovery happens or doesn't happen. Like discovering something like that is not like a bunch of small iterative things. It just like
happens.
Like
it's like a breakthrough. It's a scientific breakthrough.
But yeah, do we want to end this segment with predictions on who we think will win?
Who has the right to win? I feel like OpenAI agent, and then I think Perplexity Comet will like actually get a reasonable user base, but I don't think it'll ever become like the default the way we see like Chrome right now.
Yeah, I think the only way they can become the default is if they get a deal with Apple. I think that's kind of like one of their looming things. I do think they have a better product because I honestly, and I don't know if we want to go into this, but I think Perplexity's search engine is the best if you use the Pro subscription. I think they suck at making the freemium model because their free version is so bad that people don't understand how good their Pro version is compared to their free version, versus GPT's difference between the free and the Pro version is like a little closer to like warrant people switching to Pro.
I actually don't think Perplexity free is like that bad.
But I think what they do really well is they're really fast. I think they're the fastest search engine, and like GPT is so fucking slow. And so Perplexity gets more of my search queries on that alone. And so,
do you pay for it yourself?
No, I mean I have like some free like trial thing.
We all have the free one.
It's never.
Remember we all got the code?
Yeah, like it's never ended. I've like I've never needed to pay for it. It was like from some X tweet that I sent in the chat, and I was like, just add this to your thing. But yeah, so like in my opinion, I think Perplexity could build a better product. I think they have a team that could beat, but it's just like, are they going to have this the business strategy shake itself out, regardless of if their product wins? Like there's very few times where someone's product alone is the reason why they win.
Yeah, that's true. But I think the difference in this case is as we move towards more agentic flows, I think like correctness and completing a query to someone's satisfaction will end up being more important than how quickly you're able to get there. Like there's so many different like layers of order because it's like first you have to be able to actually do it. Then after you can do it, you want to like optimize for the best one. Then after that, you want to optimize for the time it takes for you to get there. And so I think there's all of these different layers, but I think that there will be more importance put on like the correctness and accuracy of a task being completed.
I mean, we saw this with OpenAI, like in the search game itself, where like OpenAI had the best engine at first, and then a lot of these users actually caught up to them and made a very, very competitive thing. Even Grok 4 is like very competitive, but it just doesn't warrant the switch over.
No, it doesn't.
Right? And it's crazy because like they were only that much better for about 6 months to a year. We're basically in this like nebulous state of like users changing their habits and choosing what they want to use. And so it's like, who is going to be the first best browser agent, which I'm curious, but yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, I am curious. Anyways.
Maya's still a curious girl. She's a curious girl.
But yeah, should we move on to AI news in China?
Yes. So moving on, there is a lot of AI news coming out of China because last week NVIDIA basically said that they're going to resume selling their H20 chip to China. So earlier the US had restricted access to this and like back in April, I think, and we'll get into that more. But now NVIDIA is coming and selling back to China. And then the second thing we want to talk about within this story is the Kimi K2 model, which is Moonshot's new open source model. And it's making headlines very similar to what we saw with DeepSeek. Because it is open source, it's performing really well, and they actually trained it in like a different way to make it more agentic. So we'll talk more about that as well. Yeah. But we can start with NVIDIA. Yeah,
so NVIDIA resumed sales of its H20 chips in China as part of the U.S. negotiations on rare earth minerals. Basically, China agreed to restart rare earth shipments back to the U.S. manufacturers, which I think China owns like 90% of their rare earth market.
It's like insane.
And so as a result, NVIDIA will now start shipping the H20 AI chips, which is specifically designed in 2022 to comply with the U.S. export restrictions while still maintaining access to the Chinese market. So it's essentially a scaled down version of like NVIDIA's flagship H100 processor. And it's the most advanced AI chip legally exportable to China. So they literally just made it so that they could export it to China's market. And then, like, in April, Trump was like, no, we can't be doing this. And this actually received bipartisan support. And then in the last couple of months, Jensen Huang has been campaigning so much to open back up. He's been grinding. Have you been seeing what he's been doing? I was like, grinding. I didn't realize. Like,
I feel like he's a really good CEO.
He is. But yeah,
the articles are always like inside employees that choose not to be named say Jensen Huang never wanted this life for himself. He'd rather be focused on NVIDIA, but he has no choice but to politic.
No, and he's been politicking well.
I also think this is like one of those issues where like you can kind of make the argument either way, and like we can get more into it, but it's like we are codependent on each other.
I mean, like the entire reason this entire thing started was because of the tariffs. Like when Trump was being ridiculous and slapping insane tariffs on China. And then like everything after that was just like fully a retaliatory game of like China being like, well, we know you need us, so we're going to take this away. And then us being like, okay, well, we know you need this, so we're going to take this away.
And rare earth minerals, there's like 17 kinds, and they're in like all of our electronic devices, but they're also in like all of our defense.
And like more so than China, even just like having the rare earth elements, they are the only ones that know how to process it. Yeah. And so it's like, even if you go find somewhere else where you can get it from, they're the only ones that can process it into a usable form.
You know what's funny is like tariffs and stuff would come up in like high school debate, which now must be like 5 to 10 years ago, right? And like rare earth minerals was like one of the like most important things like then too. Like it's like in terms of what we're depending
like
on.
It doesn't change.
Like it hasn't changed. Yeah. Like if they decide to screw us, we are just like screwed.
Yeah.
Well, then at the same time they screw their own economy. That's like part of the thing too.
Yeah. No, it's like I don't think they would unless like we give them a reason to. But like
yeah.
Well,
the reason why Jensen Huang really cares about this is because in 2024, China generated around $12 billion in revenue for NVIDIA, which is around 10 to 15%. And so it's a huge chunk of the pie. And he's also worried about Huawei catching up. So Huawei is like kind of like the China competitor in terms of hardware. And they were able to make a similar GPU to the H20, which is like nowhere near NVIDIA's like leading GPUs, but still like switching over to Huawei's stack is like really worrisome for them. And so right now Huawei like is kind of limited to how many GPUs they can make themselves. So there's like still many hurdles that they have to cross, but he's like, the longer that we close this up, the worse that our competitive edge in this market for China is going to be. Like, we don't want to cut off this supply because then they're going to be forced to be independent. We're not sitting on some like material the way they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's crazy how fast things move because TSMC has like already repurposed all the lines that were building H20s, which is insane because like now apparently there might be delays of like up to 9 months in like getting this production back to the point that it was at and having the supply to send to China. And so in like 2 months, they've already repurposed all of this and it's setting them back another 9 months. And so like to Maya's point, you get behind really, really quickly.
It's still expected to generate like $15 billion in 2025 from China. So like NVIDIA stock obviously did well in the news, is up like 4.5% during that day. And then I think it corrected a bit, but like the general outlook's positive.
Yeah. Well, NVIDIA is a long hold for sure. No investment advice from us. But yeah, I wanted to go into why for those who are curious about the H20 and why it's not worrisome that we're giving it to them. Because I do think there's a point of like, oh, if we just give them a bunch of H100s and H200s, which are like the better GPUs, like they could build better models.
They'll have the compute they need.
Yeah. But basically the H20 chip is optimized for running inference and not training models. Because it has a bunch of restrictions, it can only run the actual model, but it can't help train larger models. And so when I was looking at DeepSeek R1, it was primarily trained on Hopper GPUs that they had from prior to like the ban, and then 30,000 H20 chips, and then 10,000 H800s and 10,000 H100s, which they probably got through like Singapore's back channels or something like that. And so a large majority of their cluster is not on H20s. So it doesn't mean that like if we give these chips, they'll be able to make like another competitor model just on the chips alone. Like they'll be able to do it because they like make some other breakthrough that we haven't made or something like that.
Do you know how long we've been selling H20s to them, just in general? Because like this was like an established process of something we were doing.
3 years.
3 years?
Since 2022,
okay.
Yeah. And I think the actual bigger story behind all of this is actually the CUDA platform. CUDA stands for, I don't know exactly what CUDA stands for, but it's CUDA. And this is the software layer on top of the chip. So to be able to use the chip, you need the software. And what's crazy, and I didn't realize this, but over 50% of global AI researchers use CUDA. So creates a network effect that like all of the standard libraries are on top of CUDA to be able to train these models. So there's a huge development ecosystem. So when we lock them out of these chips, we also lock them out of this like developer ecosystem. Yeah. So the other thing, a part of this entire story is that even though Huawei's making these chips and Huawei's making their own software on top of these chips, Chinese AI researchers can't even like build on top of that software because they don't know how to. And so even when Chinese models like DeepSeek run on our hardware, they only achieve 60% of the inference performance provided by NVIDIA's H100s if they don't use CUDA. They're also reliant on NVIDIA's software.
Yeah.
Which is never really talked about in the, I feel like not talked about the like mainstream media.
Yeah, it's basically like the same argument that Jensen Huang made, which is that you want China to be on the United States' software stack. And I think like, who is the one that's in the Trump administration out of All In?
David Sachs.
David Sachs, I think, made the same argument as like cryptos are, AIs are. And so that is like the main argument for it is like you prefer China to be on like our software versus like building their own entire systems. I was reading a Substack article about this by Nate Jones, and he basically talked about how when we think of China and the US, we should think more about like creating AI that will like serve humans versus AI that will serve itself, and how like ultimately China and the United States have to work together. And he drew like interesting comparisons during like the time of nuclear proliferation and how like even though like it was literally the Cold War, like the US and Russia still had like certain lines of communication where they realized it was just like mutually beneficial to help each other.
Yeah.
And like he kind of makes the argument that like we should be working with China more on AI, and like we can recognize that like certain things are like competitive, like how AI is going to be in like our defense systems and stuff, but our like top AI researchers should actually be like meeting and like talking about safety together.
We also get a lot more insight into what they're doing than they get into what we're doing, just because like most of the things that they put out are open source.
I'm also just like curious as to like the policy angle of like why we like cared so much to close H20s.
I just think we needed something. Like we needed something that they actually care enough about that we could take away.
It's also very debated how like effective they are. Like a lot of people do think that they're like legitimately going to help China's AI capabilities quite a bit.
Well, all the technical blogs I read about this don't think that.
I feel like the average congressperson does.
But they're not the top researchers and experts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which if I was a congressperson, I would just realize that there are things above me that I might not understand.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could say that about, like, climate change. Like, all the top scientists aren't, like, conspiring against us to tell us climate change is real. It's like, I don't know, that's, like, a lot of things.
But it's like, what would the alternative have been?
It also is a good trading tool, right? Like,
it is a good trading tool, but I think, like, the way it's talking about in the media is, like, oh, my God, China's going to take over because they have the H20s, which is, like, no, there's just no way they can do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to China taking over. Moonshot releases.
This might be worrisome, this next story.
This is definitely worse.
The Kimi K2 model. I think that's a sick name. It's basically the Moonshot AI's latest model, and it uses mixture of experts architecture, which we'll talk more about, and it has 32 billion activated parameters at a time with a query and 1 trillion total parameters in the whole model.
And in terms of like benchmarks, it's pretty impressive and competitive with US models. It beats Claude Opus 4 on like some of them. It has better performance than some of OpenAI's coding models. And it's way cheaper. So for like input tokens, just like for context, it's like 15 cents for every 1 million input tokens and 250 per 1 million output tokens. And Claude Opus 4 for its input tokens charges 100x that. So it's 15 million per input token and 75 million per output token. So it's like way cheaper.
Yeah. If you didn't know, Kimi K2 was built by only 200 people, with very few of them having frontier experience, and they had also a modest GPU budget just because of the restrictions. And so the fact that they were able to make such a like competitive model with such little is something that people have been talking about. And I feel like when DeepSeek was first released, everyone was super worried, and this one didn't really make the headlines like DeepSeek did.
Well, it was DeepSeek's RL or
R1.
Like it was R1 that made all the headlines,
Yeah,
right?
but not V3.
And the reasoning model made the headlines. And isn't this the non-reasoning model?
It's a non-reasoning model, but I think
do you think they'll release a reasoning model?
Yeah, they have plans to.
So then do you think that'll be what makes the headlines?
Yeah. So like,
because isn't this the same thing that happened last time?
Yeah, because we talked about V3. We talked about how insane V3 was, and then a month later they released R1.
But that's when like everything actually moved.
Yeah,
like I still
yeah.
don't understand why.
Well, so actually I was reading a Substack about this because this guy was like literally saying this is the same story repeating ourselves. No, we definitely shouldn't. We should just buy at the dip when it happens. He was like the story is literally repeating itself. It's like the non-reasoning model gets released, the reasoning one's gonna get released. People are gonna get worried all over again, and then people are gonna be not worried all over again when OpenAI releases like GPT-5 or something like that.
We
like
have all our tweets ready to go from now.
But yeah, a huge part of the reason why this model was competitive was because it was trained on a different data set, and two, it used a different optimizer called the Muon optimizer instead of Atom W. And we can talk about what optimizers are, but yeah.
Yeah, they use agentic data pipelines that were like, a lot of them was like synthetic data.
They basically have a bunch of like real world scenarios. So like the same things that we were talking about for the browsers, like booking a flight or ordering food delivery, those are the types of like data sets, like the actual data sets that are being used, which we've like never heard of that being used before. And I feel like traditionally in the US and like with our model players, they're basically like, the longer we make this model think, for example, like the better answer we can get out of it. Like either you provide like more compute to it or you make it think for longer and we'll get like a better answer out of it. But their approach here was that let's just give them different scenarios, those scenarios being like real world scenarios, and it'll require the model to think more deeply, but not because we're telling it to think for longer, just because it has like additional context. And even on the benchmark, like I think we saw it was scoring the highest on the EQ test, which I think is also pretty telling.
And creative writing, too.
Which is so interesting.
Because, like, the one thing that we've noticed about models is that they're not creative. So the fact that they scored really high on creative writing makes me think that, like, we're hitting a new side to the models. Because, like, no matter how good we do on these benchmarks, model can't do something that a human hasn't done before, if that makes sense.
It makes sense.
And so it's like, how do you break past that?
Yeah.
And then the second thing that they did was they used the Muon optimizer. So really quick, in machine learning, you have a loss function, and it's basically a mathematical formula that measures how far a model's predictions are from the true target values. So basically says like, hey, how bad is this model? Then an optimizer basically adjusts the model's internal parameters, or like their weights, to minimize this function. And so the process of adjusting these weights is very compute intense. And so Adam W is like more compute heavy than Muon. As a result, they were allowed to use, I think, like 2x fewer flops, which like we don't have to go into flops, but you can just say, okay, this is like twice as better, and it was using 50% less memory during their training.
And it's interesting because one of the key differences between Adam W and Muon was that Adam W uses individual parameters, and it basically like gets the derivative of it, and then it calculates this loss function that Maya was talking about. But the difference with Muon is it looks at blocks of parameters instead of like the individual parameter, which is one of the reasons they're able to use like so much less compute. But it also means that like when you get the derivative of it, you're getting like the second order derivative of it instead of the first order derivative of it. And so people think that that's like another reason why it's like performing a lot better. It's really interesting because like this entire framework came out last December. So it's like very new. No one's ever really used it at like a large scale before. And so this is like the first time that we're seeing it, and it has like good results.
Yeah. And I think this is where China is like having a competitive edge over the US. So like no leading lab switched to the Muon optimizer model, even though it's been released since December. Like they've had enough time. And part of the reason why is because they have these huge training budgets, like these huge GPU budgets, where they can just spend 10x more money than they did before. And we haven't hit any sort of plateau point of spending more money doesn't result in more outcomes. So it's like, if you're trying to plan for 6 months out from now and you have the money, you're just going to spend the money. Like you're going to de-risk your future rather than potentially spend a bunch of money on an optimizer model that might not work. Versus like Moonshot AI, it's like kind of in their name, Moonshot, right? Where they don't have the money to compete against an OpenAI or an Anthropic. And so they know that they're destined to fail. So then they're going to try these different
anything
things.
they can.
And like in their blog post, they mentioned this thing, which I think a lot of AI researchers agree with, where if you were to read all of the internet data, you would be way smarter than a current model is. And like if our current models are trained on all of the internet data, and they're not as smart as a human, or they can't be as successful as a human. One, there's like a lack of data that we're not training on, which is like what we saw in the browser story, where like, you know, there's like more to just searching,
like
or there's more
data.
Yeah, there's agentic data. But two, we're not learning enough. Like we're not being as efficient with our learning. Why does it take like 10 math textbooks to teach an AI model, but half of a textbook to teach a human on a math topic?
That's true.
Right? Is there something that we're doing algorithmically wrong? And this is where we don't know enough about our human brain. Like we don't know how we're adjusting our like internal neural networks, right? We're just guessing. We're just guessing based on math. And so a lot of the game of making a better AI model is like, I think that this algorithm that I'm going to use is going to result in a better AI model, but I have no idea because I have nothing to like, I don't know what my human brain looks like or acts like. We know like the end result of what we want, but we don't really know the path to get there. And so there's a lot of guesswork and money involved. And because there's so much money being poured into the like industry, we're allowed to do this. But it's like funny because you would think because there's so much money, we would be a little bit more risky with our money.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're just spending, like the US is just spending all its money on
compute. It's
on
literally
compute,
on
right?
compute and like data maybe.
So it's like, it's crazy because like we 10x, 20x, 100x the amount of money we put into AI in the last like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And we're still not being risky. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the things that we're using are things that we discovered 5 to 10 years ago.
And we're causing a lot of other issues for ourselves too. Like when you look at compute and the grid and like overloading the grid and all of those things, I feel like we're not thinking about any of those things because we're like, we have the money. And if we have the money, it's fine. Like we'll figure the rest out later. Versus China doesn't have that luxury. And like the United States alone is basically forcing them to innovate because like we take away so much from them that they're like, well, I guess all we have left is our brains, so we'll just get to work and use them.
Yeah. I think also the incentive for like a small lab to compete in the US, there is no incentive.
There is no incentive.
The incentive is just like, okay, you do something and then the top lab just acquires you.
Yeah.
And it's like, and like you don't always want to be that. I don't know.
I mean, like, I feel like the only scenario I see it is like it coming out of like a PhD program or something like that where your entire focus is research.
Once they stop seeing, once scaling laws stop helping them, like once they stop seeing compute help them, or when people start cracking down on profitability and like all the LPs dry up, then we're gonna see them care. Yeah. Or we're gonna see the bubble pop, and then no one's gonna make progress for 10 years.
The bubble bop.
Bubble. But yeah.
And I think this brings us to like the question that I asked us this question a few days ago, which is like, why don't we think that US model has used mixture of experts? And basically mixture of experts is just like you only like light up a certain part of the model that's like focused on what the query is asking about. So it's basically like you have a query and then there's something called like gating where like you route the query and then it like goes to an expert, and it is like more efficient, and it's what Moonshot is doing with this model. And in terms of the answer to that question, it seems like GPT-4 did kind of do this. Like it had 8 smaller models, but it seems like people thought that it was like performing worse. And like in general, it seems like there are like a different set of risks with mixture of experts where like it's more efficient, but you also have to be like really good at gating a query to the right set of experts. And if you don't, the expert could like hallucinate and you like think you get the right answer, but you don't. And so I wonder if they're just like,
It's like not worth
it's not
solving.
worth it. Yeah. And
Or,
like I'm
like,
sure
or
they've
it's
done it
also, like-
internally.
Yeah, or if they think it's like so risky because our models are so advanced and like benchmarking so well that like if they take this risk on something new, that like people kind of like lump in all together, and it's like significantly worse if it'll hurt their brand image. Like it could totally be a branding thing too.
But we have money for days apparently. So
Yeah,
And
we have
then
a lot of money.
and then Saudi's willing to fund our stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's like no
There's like no end
no
in sight.
end in sight.
Yeah.
And then I think the last piece of this is China's decision to open source their technology and how they're using this. They're not going to have the best model and like the best companies. So like this is their way of reaching some amount of control where like developers around the world will like build on top of their technology, which I think eventually will become a lever for control, but I don't know how, because like I don't think it'll be data necessarily, and I don't think it'll be monetization. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's partially just like undercutting us.
There's few dollars to be made if you don't open source it. Like if you charge people to use it, people will not use it.
Yeah, so I'm saying like, but like they're charging so little that they're like probably not going to make much money off of it, right? And then like, do you think it's like a data thing?
No. I genuinely think that like they're going to make so little money off of charging people that they would rather just make it open source, and the positives, like the positives of making it open source, like
it's just
greatly,
a PR move.
Yeah, like, or I think China just realizes that like no one's going to pay for Chinese models right now.
No, I get that, but it's like
it's okay. For example, like it's not good enough to beat GPT-4 or Gemini or Claude, right? And so because it's not that good, like it is amazing, but it's not like the leading model. No one's going to pay for it.
So you have to provide like some incentive.
I see.
If you wanted to cut costs, right? You're you would just use the open source model. If you're building a product and you don't care too much about the user experience and you're really caring about profitability, you're looking for an open source model. Like, I don't think the people who are looking for like the cheapest model that is like slightly better than the leading open source model is like a good enough delta.
No, that all makes sense. It's more like what China's, like, I think like China sees it as a strategy, right? To have like the whole world on their technology. And I feel like it parallels what they've done even in terms of like infrastructure, where they like go into Africa and provide a bunch of infrastructure for free, because then it's like when they need to call in a favor or like something like that. Like, that's like been their whole strategy. It's like,
but I think that strategy is like over talked about or overhyped up, or what are you saying? Over, and is like inflated in terms of its effectiveness.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess that's like a different conversation. I think it's more just like, okay, like with something like infrastructure, it's like very easy to understand, where like you can go to the leader of an African nation and be like, all the bridges and roads in this country were like funded by us, so like you're gonna do what we say, otherwise we'll stop funding it, and then they'll do it. But it's like not as clear with like an open source model like what their goal is, I guess.
I don't even feel like there needs to be a goal. I think the literal thing is that there is no incentive to make it, like there is so little incentive to charge for it that it's better to make it open source. Like, I don't think it's sense. I think we're overthinking it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because also it's not for the data. Like, you probably know this better than I do, but like when we use OpenAI, for example, like we're all sending API requests to them. And so like we're feeding them our data so that we can like get answers back. But in a situation like this, like, aren't you just, like, you can clone it and run it locally, right? Mm-hmm. So like you're not even feeding them any data. So it's like not about the data at all.
A lot of people probably won't though. Like, a lot of people probably will just use an API call.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that, but I'm saying like the data is probably even like less relevant.
Yeah.
When it comes to like an open source model, as opposed to like a closed source model where you literally have to feed them.
Yeah. Yeah, but then it becomes a scale thing where it's like if the entire world is like using your model, even if it's open source, you're probably collecting like a decent amount of data.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm sure you still are, but for any of the like researchers, like they're not probably using any of that.
Yeah.
Or like enterprises aren't using any of that.
Yeah. I am excited. Maybe not so excited, but I'm excited to see, or I'm interested to see if our market crashes when Moonshot AI comes out with their reasoning model.
I don't think it will. I feel like.
You think people are going to price it in? I think it'll be a smaller crash. I think people just like,
it's very in recent memory that we overreacted to
like DeepSeek. Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. Maybe we'll underreact to Moonshot AI, and then it'll take over our world. JK.
Maybe.
Moving on to Lovable. So Lovable just raised $200 million.
Should we say it's our Get the Check segment?
Oh, yeah, you got that.
Moving on to our Get the Check segment of this week, we are talking about Lovable, which just raised $200 million at a $1.8 billion valuation. This was their Series A, just 6 months after their seed round, and they basically are a text to prototype / product type of tool. So like I could be like, make a website for Get the Check, and it would return a website to me, and then I could continue to prompt it with like our branding and stuff. But the overall goal of the company is like less than 1% of people in the world are developers, but they truly see the future of product and building as owned by any person that wants to. And so they're creating this like text to product.
Yeah. And like Annika said, there's no coding interface, so it's not like Cursor or Windsurf where you have to have like an IDE open to like write and edit code. The idea is that it's like kind of just like an out of the box product, and so a lot of people use it for essentially vibe coding or just like testing if an idea or product makes sense. So for a lot of founders or people who have side hustles that they just want to try something out. And so I think there's like basically in the like coding agent space, there's basically two segments. There's the no code / low code, and then there's like the professional developer segment. In the no code / low code, we see Lovable, obviously, Replit, which was originally like a browser coding environment similar to like Google Docs, where both of you could edit at the same time and collaborate. Then that repivoted to like the Lovable type of interface. And then also V0, which is released by Vercel. Vercel is originally like a front-end deploying app, and they now have an agent where you can like type a prompt, and then it'll like make the front end change for you. So Vercel is like pretty good at front end because they're the front end deploying app. They're like, they know front end really well.
Yeah. And what's interesting is Lovable also, this was the third launch that they did. So they originally started, their first product was called GPT Engineer, and it basically was built specifically for developers, and it was like open source on GitHub and all of this. And they had 2 launches. Both of them were like super unsuccessful, and like they just like couldn't get traction with like the broader market. And so then they built like a graphical interface and like pivoted to this idea of like what it is today. And they basically expanded their market. And like when they did that at their third launch, they saw like insane growth. And like when people say all the numbers, they're like, this was like 8 months after their public launch, or like they have 2.3 active users, all of that, sorry, 2.3 million. All of that is like related to this third launch of the product, but they've been working on this for a while.
Yeah. So they've seen that explosive growth. Their competitors also have seen that explosive growth. So Replit was, like I was saying, they like started back in 2016, and they basically have like flatline growth to like probably 10 to 15 million ARR up until like 2024. And then in the last year, they've just skyrocketed to 100 million ARR. And like Replit's been around because it's basically, like I said, like this like coding browser tool where it's like you're editing code like a Google Doc, and you can kind of just like run it locally. They're known by the community because they have like a huge user base, like a huge free user base, and they were never able to figure out their monetization strategy, and they could never figure out pricing. And so then as a result, when they switched to the like the Lovable strategy, they like skyrocketed. And part of like the skyrocketing that I see happening with both Lovable and Replit is like the whole wow factor of like, holy shit, I can do this. But if you actually see the amount of apps and like things that come out of these things that like are deployed and used, it's like a very, very small percentage. And so like what you see is like very high usage of people coming in being like, holy shit, I want to use this, using it for like 2 to 3 months and then dropping off. In my opinion, I'm really worried about investing in those types of businesses where there's like no stickiness to it, because there's nothing to make you come back. Like with Lovable, it's like really, really good at starting a project, but you don't really, they haven't figured out the like continuing the project
like the scaling,
part, the scaling the project part. And so there's no reason for me to come back. Like what if I'm like, now if it's like just like normal for everyone to build side apps, right? Or normal to everyone to build their own agents, like it's kind of just like, okay, I'll build the side app and then it'll be like kind of useful, but not really. Yeah. And then I'll just like move on.
Yeah. I think that is like the one issue that I see with Lovable versus a company like V0 or a product like V0, where V0 can easily be integrated into your like everyday workflow. Anytime you need to change a feature or like make a new page on your product or whatever it is, you go to V0 and like look at that flow and then you implement that flow. But in this case, because it very much is like the prototype version or like the completed product, then like it is what it is, but it's really difficult for an enterprise scale customer to use something like that. Cause it's like, what are you using it for?
Yeah. The one thing I see where this is potentially useful, and if Lovable can figure this out, is if they start to compete with like Retool. So Retool is like the leading admin apps provider. So like, for example, in your company, you might need to do this like niche workflow. And so it's like worth the developer's time to like automate that very niche workflow just specific to your company. And so Retool is like this no code platform that like pretty much every like new tech startup is integrated with, where you can build like front end apps really easy. It's like they've like componentized everything. So like adding a text field or submitting a form is like really, really easy to do. And you just like hook it up within a matter of hours. And Retool basically showed that like there is a market for admin apps. Like building internal apps is really useful. There's a lot of time spent on it, and making that faster and more efficient can like up level all of your employees. And I think if Lovable can kind of compete in that market where it makes it even easier to build admin apps, like they could basically dip their toes into the enterprise contracts, and then I would like use Lovable pretty much on an everyday basis, because like I have internal stakeholders, for example, like ops is my internal stakeholder, or like the account managers are my internal stakeholder, and I build tools for them. And if I could use Lovable and use just like prompts to build tools rather than like
then they could just build it. Like I've like used Retool to like build a tool internally.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm saying like anyone can build anything for each other.
But then it like frees up your time for like other stuff too.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's where I see like Lovable potentially having a sticky user base is from something like that.
I honestly think they'd have a really sticky user base if like what they say their current product is like actually works. Like, for example, if we were building a website and like Lovable actually worked like really well, why would I not use like text to product? It's just like it doesn't actually work to like one shot things.
I think it works. Like, I think creativity is hard. Like, for a website, for example. But I think that like if you're building a technical product, it is like a lot. Yeah, because it's like when you think about like B2B, I think like consumer products in general are difficult because like there is like a level of like taste
design
and like design that you like need in it. But when you're building like a B2B app, like it's a lot more straightforward in like what you need to have.
Yeah, like you'll never build a consumer product on Lovable.
Yeah.
But I can see you building a dashboard for your customers on Lovable.
Yeah. Didn't you use it to build something?
Well, yeah, so basically me and my friends at work were trying to like there was like 3 big projects that like every engineer is on, which is like kind of rare. Normally you have like a bunch of engineers on like smaller projects and then like maybe 1 or 2 bigger projects. And so because like basically 90% of our engineering team is on one of these big 3, they all had launch dates around the first week of July, and no one was clear on who was going to win, like who was going to launch first.
Well, you're all winners. You all work at the same company.
No, but it was
We're
like
all on the same team here, Maya.
Okay, but like my competitive nature was like, dude, I want like our product to launch first, because like obviously timelines are going to get pushed. Like there's always reasons for timelines to get pushed, and so I was like, we should have a prediction market on which one of the 3 wins.
What's like the criteria for winning?
Just like launching first.
Oh, just launching.
Yeah. Because then it like motivates you to like launch faster.
Yeah.
I will say I didn't build the app because I like I did use Lovable and I like sent it to some people, and it was really cool. But there was like no way to like tie a monetary incentive to it because like it's like work. It's like kind of weird.
Yeah.
And so it would just like kind of so at that point it just become like a normal voting algorithm, which I thought was like less fun.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
anyways,
I stole your idea at work.
You did?
We like basically because the way we have this thing called like Bonusly, and so like it is actually monetary value because like you redeem it for gift cards and stuff. So like it actually is tied to money, and so we were like we should just make Kalshi markets like
on Bonusly.
Oh
wait,
you know,
we had the
Venture
same
made
thing too.
calls.
yeah, like you can tie it to like your internal rewards.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm back on this.
The current like venture kids made Kalshi for like betting on like college relationships, like
No
their
way.
own markets. Yeah, because I was like catching up with one of them a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me about it.
That's
like,
really
so
funny.
That's so funny because like Facebook's first version was just like hot or not.
Yeah,
It's just like
That's
a full
also
circle.
like oh my god, I feel like in high school on Twitter, like the polls.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys had that, but like literally
Yeah.
everyone would poll.
Yeah,
like they just vibe coded like Kalshi, but like you pick your own betting market, which is cool.
yeah. No, that is
Like,
cool.
and you can just share it with like the people you want in the private market.
Yeah.
That is fun.
No, but yeah, wanted to say that I should have made that market because I did win. So cool. Yeah. Oh yeah. So would Lovable get your check? Probably not, right? Yeah. It's just like in the case that they work, they really work, but like odds are against them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also tough because they're so like I feel like literally they could get wiped out in an instant.
Yeah, by OpenAI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, or like Claude, honestly, because I actually think that the like Claude coding capabilities and like specifically the like text to product or whatever, like that is really good. But they would have to figure out the like UI
Well, I was
piece of it.
I was curious why Anthropic or OpenAI haven't tried to do that, like build a Lovable type of competitor. Like OpenAI and they're both clearly going after the cursors of the world and not the Lovables of the world. And so I was like, oh, interesting. Because like if they wanted to, they could definitely figure it out within a couple of months.
Yeah. Wait, I feel like even that is like mind blowing to me, like the cursor thing, how like literally no one uses cursor anymore. And it's like mind blowing to me because it's like cursor was like all the rage. Every single person was using it. They had like insane ARR. Literally, I don't hear a single person using cursor anymore. Like everyone uses Claude Code. Everyone's like cursor is like so 2 months ago. And it's just like crazy how fast everything moves.
Well, I was gonna say everyone at my company still uses Cursor because we couldn't get off the Claude Code waitlist.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you'll get there one day.
But
Awkward.
okay. But anyways, yeah.
But you guys use Codex, right?
No. I use Codex. No one else does.
But dude, Maya got special approval.
No. Like everyone has Codex. They just don't use it.
Oh.
Only I do. And I'm trying to convince people that it is the superior, but no one believes me.
It is the superior.
It's superior. Okay, because the thing is, like, I'm not even joking. The other day, I was like using my phone in the shower. Someone texted me about a bug. I opened GPT Codex. Like, I opened GPT on my phone, which has Codex, and I sent out a PR from my phone.
That's crazy.
Like, I keep telling people, like, I was like, I'm coding in the shower.
Like you actually are.
Yeah. I don't know if that's like TMI.
No, that's hilarious.
That's awesome.
But I'm like, you can up-level your skill if you just try. Anyways.
Okay, well, that's a wrap.
On that note, we gotta go to work.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
We do.